Vader felt an ancient pull in the Force coming from Arcanis' arm, like an unbreakable thread. "Locate the source," he ordered, and the respirator marked the beat of an omen. "My lord, should I contact Coruscant?" asked the captain, tense. "No, this is mine," he replied, his eyes fixed on the trace on the display. With each jump, the presence had grown, young and stubborn, insisting on being found. "Who are you calling me?" he murmured, not realizing he was speaking aloud. Tatooine appeared like a scar on the map, and a memory in his chest, dry and uncomfortable. "I'm landing alone. Keep your distance," he said, descending the ramp like a sentence. The Force pointed to Mos Eisley, hot and electric, hard to ignore. Officers suggested tracking probes and quick sieges in the city. "Do what you need to do, but no one touches the target without my order," he cut in. The sound of the respirator seemed to converse with the dunes that had seen him as a boy. In the cantina, informants sold fear in exchange for credits and the promise of forgiveness. "A kid pilots a speeder as if he were born in a cockpit," said a Twi'lek. "Name?" growled Vader, approaching until silence became law. "Luke lives with Owen and Beru on a farm," stammered the alien. The name cut inside like a cold, unwanted blade, opening memories. "Show me the route," he ordered, and the city map trembled in the informant's hands. Owen read the dust on the horizon and understood that it wasn't just the late afternoon wind. "Luke, get inside," he shouted, while his nephew was still fiddling with the slider. "Uncle, just one more adjustment," insisted the boy, his eyes shining with the open sky. "Now," Beru added quietly, "obey, dear, please." The wind carried a taste of metal and storm that no sensor could detect. "Ben, we need Ben," said Beru, and Luke dashed across the dunes. Luke went to the hermit's cave, his heart racing faster than his feet. "Ben! There's a man in black coming to the farm," he said, swallowing sand. Obi-Wan opened the door before the second knock, as if he had been expecting the news. "Come in without arguing," he said, calm as still water. "I can help," Luke insisted, not knowing what his body already knew. "When the time comes, you will help. Now, hiding is the wise thing to do," he concluded. Vader crossed the courtyard with steps that sank into the hot sand. "We have nothing that interests you," said Owen, firm on the outside and alert on the inside. "Everything that interests me is here," replied Vader, without raising his voice. Beru held Luke behind the wall, like a wall of arms and simple courage. "Stay. Don't move," she whispered, feeling the boy vibrate like a taut string. The stormtroopers surrounded them, but a gesture from the Lord froze them in place. Obi-Wan stepped out of the shadow of the passageway and lit the blue blade, clear and ancient. "Get away from this house," he said, placing his body between the family and the shadow. Vader bowed, recognizing a guard form he had faced before. "Old man, you don't know what you guard," he replied, cold and unhurried to kill. "I know enough to protect them," returned the hermit, steady as a rock. Luke held his breath and heard the vibration of the sabers before he saw them. The Force thickened the air, and the first blow cut through the distance like dry thunder. Obi-Wan absorbed the impact in Soresu, guiding the storm away from the door. Vader attacked with technique and weight, a discipline forged between loss and anger. "You are not an inquisitor," Obi-Wan noted, retreating with measured elegance. "No, I am something you cannot stop," he replied, sweeping sparks through the air. The farm held its breath, and the sand became a stage and a witness. "Who are you?" Obi-Wan taunted, trying to read beyond the metal and shadow. "Someone who has come to take what is rightfully his," Vader said, advancing steadily. "You will not take the boy," the master cut in, his voice like an ancient wall. "Boy," Vader repeated, and the word opened a door that had been locked for years. Owen shouted from the porch, "Ben, keep him away from the house." "I'm trying," replied the hermit, spinning low to break the rhythm. The duel hit the humidity tanks, burst pipes, and released moist steam. Obi-Wan sought the side, pierced the defense in a half moon, and scraped the helmet. The cut streaked across the helmet from top to bottom, sparking pain and memory. Behind the metal, a human eye burned, exposed to the son of two suns. Anakin, he whispered. A question that was also an apology and a longing. Vader grabbed the edge, took off his helmet, and was left with only the respirator around his neck. Luke took half a step back, but Beru held him back with a firm embrace. Obi-Wan kept his blade raised, but his voice softened for a moment. Anakin, if anything of you still lives there, don't do this, he pleaded without pretense. That name doesn't belong to me, growled the voice that the machine had made harsh. It does, and you know it, he replied, letting the wind complete the argument. Stormtroopers adjusted their formation, nervous fingers on trembling triggers. Orders, Lord Vader? Asked the sergeant, aiming at the kitchen door. Stand back, he said, and the contradiction burned hotter than the midday sun. Obi-Wan felt the moral window open like a quick flash in a dense night. Not for me, Anakin. For him, he insisted, pointing only with his eyes inside. Don't call me that. And the red reignited like a stubborn wound. The fight rose to the ring of rock, where the wind sings ancient stories. Remember the low stance? Obi-Wan taunted, feinting with his metal knee. And you still expose your flank when you try to save everyone, Vader retorted. I tried to save you, said the Master, parrying with economy and memory. You let me burn, struck the Sith. Pain that did not fit, only in the body. I loved him like a brother, he said, and the Force trembled, listening. Luke reached out his hand without knowing why, and a key vibrated in the dust of the courtyard. Obi-Wan felt the echo, and sought the phrase that breaks armor without breaking the soul. He is strong in the Force, Anakin, more than you know, and more than you fear, he said. Vader glanced away and missed the timing of an attack that would have hit. I feel it. And it scares me, he confessed, half to the wind, half to himself. Let fear be your advisor for once. Retreat, suggested the Master. The mask lying on the ground became an indecisive symbol between guilt and possibility. Palpatine promised to save what I loved, said Vader, without naming names. Sith promises charge interest that no one pays in full, retorted Obi-Wan. I paid, and I continue to pay. As if there were no end, replied the man. Stop today. Change the debt, change the debtor, change destiny, insisted the hermit. The respirator wheezed like a wounded animal, torn between flight and courage. Vader advanced hard and tore a rip in Obi-Wan's cloak, drawing blood. Luke shouted, Ben! And the cry pierced metal, machine, and frozen time. The hermit fell to his knees, supporting himself on the hot sand like a fragile plank. I don't know how to go back, said the man without a helmet, looking at the boy in the shadows. No one knows. You learn by walking, he replied, holding back pain and tenderness. In the interval between two mechanical breaths, something changed sides. Troops moved awkwardly, and a nervous shot ricocheted off the broken tank. Stop! Thundered Vader, pushing soldiers with the Force like a sudden tide. If you want to protect him, create space, Obi-Wan asked, trying to get up again. I'll create it now, replied Vader, cutting rifles and opening a clear corridor. The dust became a curtain, and the courtyard smelled of metal, ozone, and decision. In the eye of the wind, an officer aimed at the door and decided to be a hero on his own. Obi-Wan deflected a grenade with the Force, but paid dearly in body and breath. A straight shot followed Luke, like a raw and cowardly line in the tense air. Vader jumped forward and took it in the chest, the plate smoking in pain. Luke raised his hand and shouted, Stop! And for a second, everyone obeyed. The red saber went out with a snap that sounded like the closing of a cycle. My son, said Vader, and the machine seemed to sob in broken notes. Obi-Wan nodded, clear despite the blood, keeping secrets and promises. I protected him as best I could, until the Force decided to collect, he confessed. Luke stared at the man without a helmet, not knowing how to hate or how to love. You hurt Ben, he said truthfully. So stop now, he added. The officer who had fired saw the Lord unarmed and tried to finish what he had started. The beam struck Obi-Wan's torso, and the old master doubled over like a tired tree. Ben! Luke shouted, pulled back by Owen in an instinctive, protective gesture. Vader roared and crushed the shooter against the wall with the Force, dryly and definitively. Enough, he thundered, and several troopers dropped their weapons in sheer terror. The dust rose, and for a moment, everyone was just shadows and breaths. Vader reignited his saber, not to kill Obi-Wan, but to clear a path. "Together, then?" asked the hermit, smiling a worn, sweet smile. "For the last time," replied the former apprentice, assuming the name without saying it. Clean strokes broke the siege, cutting lines of fire with ancient precision. A grenade rolled, and Obi-Wan threw it high, tinging the sky with sparks. The price came in blood, and the master's body charged interest in pain. When the courtyard finally fell silent, all that remained was sand, burnt metal, and heavy choices. Vader fell to his knees, the chest plate marked by the blow that saved him. Luke emerged from the shelter, measuring the world with eyes larger than his age. "You saved us," he said, and the truth fit entirely within that short sentence. Vader removed the harness from his helmet and lightly touched the boy's shoulder, asking for permission. "I'm sorry, son," he whispered, and the respirator slowed until it fell silent. Obi-Wan slumped into a sitting position, pale and clear, the blade now extinguished on his lap. "Luke," he called, and the boy knelt, holding back tears and taking his hand. "Ben, stay with me," he asked, afraid of a void he couldn't name. "Listen," said the master, gathering each syllable as one gathers water. "Owen," he called, and the farmer approached, hard on the outside and soft on the inside. "Speak, Ben," he replied, already understanding the weight of what was to come. Beru hugged Luke from behind, offering warmth when the day only offered dust. "We'll take care of you," she promised, not knowing the way, but knowing the direction. Owen nodded, holding the hand of his old friend who had lived alongside danger. "I'll take him, whatever it takes," he said, and it sounded like an oath and a job. Luke looked at the two sons, which were setting like tired, faithful eyes. "I'll learn, Ben," he promised, not knowing to whom he was saying it more, himself or the sky. The remaining stormtroopers retreated, not daring to desecrate that courtyard. The dark carcass lay still, like a monument to error and a final gesture of certainty. The wind carried away the last grain of smoke and kept secrets that only the desert understands. Obi-Wan gently squeezed Luke's fingers, saying goodbye with old tenderness. Owen adjusted the slider at the bottom, preparing for the departure he did not want. The Force, silent, seemed to observe without judging, just remembering. The first cold touched the dunes, and with it came the certainty of leaving at dawn. Luke felt fear and courage living in the same place, fighting and embracing each other. Beru set aside supplies, a blanket, and a crystal that Ben had left behind. "There are things for you to discover," she said, without spoiling the surprise of the future. Owen tested the engine and stared at the horizon for a long second. "Let's leave before the city wakes up and asks questions," he decided. Luke stopped in front of Obi-Wan and breathed as if learning to hold his breath. "Thank you, Ben," he said, and the thank you served for everything that couldn't be put into words. The hermit smiled a small smile, made of peace and good tiredness. "May the Force be with you. Always," he murmured. Owen touched the boy's shoulder, reminding him that the living must move on. The orange sky seemed to draw a path of gentle fire into the distance. Obi-Wan gathered the last of his voice, looking at his friend and the boy with equal affection. His gaze visited the house, the dunes, and the helmet on the ground, saying goodbye without hatred. Luke moved closer, holding his hand as if holding a bridge. Beru closed her eyes for a moment, praying quietly so no one would hear. The wind fell silent, as if the sand itself wanted to hear the final words. "Owen, take him to Yoda in Dagobah. Luke is the new hope."